Hello and welcome back to Learn Akkadian. Today we're going to talk about nominal sentences. Now in Akkadian there's no verb meaning to be. So in order to express an idea like Hammurabi is the lord of the palace, which is in the present tense, or in the past tense Hammurabi was the lord of the palace, or in the future tense Hammurabi will be the lord of the palace, a nominal or verbless sentence would have been used. So here you can see our example written in Akkadian, Hammurabi bel ikalem. And as you'll note, there's no verb in this sentence, but the subject and predicate are simply placed side by side. And you'll also note that our predicate is a genitive construct with the word belum, which means lord, being shortened, and ikalem, which means palace, taking this genitive ending. You'll also note that Hammurabi is in its status absolutus with no case ending, and this is simply because it's a name. When case endings can be found in nominal sentences, both the subject and the predicate will use nominative case endings. So here we have the word awilam, which means man, and since this comes first, it's going to be our subject. So because these case endings are completely identical, word order is going to be important when translating a nominal sentence. Next we have the word sabum, which means soldier, and because this is after the subject awilam, it's going to be our predicate, which is going to be modifying the subject. Last we have ma, which is a participle. Now this participle can sometimes be translated as then, but in this case, it's going to have no translation and is only used as a signifier to denote the end of our nominal sentence. Because there's no verb in the nominal sentence, it's simply implied, we're going to use context in order to decide which tense to translate. So if we thought based off the surrounding sentences that this would be in the present tense, we could use the word is. If it was past tense, we could use the word was. And if we think that it's future tense, we would use the word will be. And these are all just different ways to translate a verb meaning to be. So here we have our translation, the man is a soldier. And as you can see, this participle is not going to be used in our translation. Nouns in a nominative sentence don't necessarily have to use the nominative case. This is just the default. For example, with this nominative sentence, awilam in a betimma, we see that the predicate, betim, is actually in the genitive case because it's related to a preposition. And we would translate this as, the man is in the house, with this ma just being a participle that comes at the end to denote that it's following the predicate. So here's another example to demonstrate a nominal sentence. Sharum labum ma. So here we have the word sharum, which means king, and it again comes first, denoting that it's going to be the subject of our sentence. Next we have labum, which means lion, and since it comes second, we're going to translate it as our predicate. And again, last we have the participle ma, which is not going to be used in our translation, but simply denotes the end of the nominal sentence. So here we have our translation, the king is a lion. And you'll note that this verb is, which has been added, could also be translated as was or will be. While nominal sentences are usually going to be translated as subject followed by predicate, there is an exception when independent pronouns are used. Here's a list of our independent pronouns in Akkadian. For first person singular common, we have the word anaku, which means I. For second person singular masculine, ata, which means you in the masculine. For the second person singular feminine, we have the word ati, which means you but in the feminine. For the third person singular masculine, we have the word shu with a long u, which means he. And in the third person singular feminine, we have the word she with a long I, and this means she. So if anybody else is studying Semitic languages, I'd be interested if the third person singular feminine is also she, because I'm curious if English somehow got that from Akkadian. The first person plural common, we have the word ninu, which means we. The second person plural masculine, we have the word atunu, which means y'all, but in the masculine. The second person plural feminine, we have atina, which means y'all in the feminine. And the third person plural masculine, we have the word shunu, which means they in the masculine. And lastly, in the third person plural feminine, we have the word shina, which means they in the feminine. Now, these pronouns can be used both in the nominative and the accusative without adding a case ending. They would simply be used in the state which you see here. When independent pronouns appear in nominal sentences, rather than appearing first in order to indicate the subject, they're going to appear after the predicate second. So here we have the word ereshum, which means farmer, followed by ma, which is again our participle, and anaku, which means I. So rather than ereshum being the subject since it becomes first, since we're dealing with an independent pronoun, this is going to act as the predicate while I is going to be the subject. So we would translate this as I am, was, or will be a farmer. And again, we're going to just pick the tense based off the context. Now you'll note that in this nominal sentence, the participle ma does not come at the end, but can be found in the middle of the sentence. And this is useful because it reminds us of the reversed word order due to the independent pronoun, which we find as the subject. While independent pronouns are super important when translating a nominal sentence because they give us the subject, they're not very important in sentences which have a verb because this information is already contained in the verb itself. So here we have a sentence which both has a verb and an independent pronoun. Anaku atspat ikalam. So here we have the independent pronoun I, but we also have a verb, sabatum, in the preterite, which also has a prefix, which is the first person common singular. So this verb already contains the subject I. As a result, when we translate this sentence, we would repeat the pronoun, emphasizing the subject. I, myself, sees the palace. And this is something that happens in royal inscriptions from Babylon, where, for example, Hammurabi would say, I myself created the canal, Hammurabi is the abundance of the people. And this is just done to emphasize that first person subject. And it's interesting because it's not necessary, but it really is used in a literary sense. That covers everything about nominal sentences and independent pronouns. Thanks for watching and happy translating.